Church, hey guys. Hey, I wanted to share a little bit of some things that have been going on, how the Lord's been speaking to me and showing me a few things. And uh, 2 Mondays ago, I was in a moment, came into my little space here, and I got a screensaver with our whole family picture on it. And so I started just reaching out over each of my kids in the picture with my hand extended onto them, blessing them. And I was emotional. I felt like I was in the spirit, and just really connected with the Lord. And in that, I thought, I want to go out of that time of blessing and prayer into a time of worship. And so I clicked on YouTube to find a worship song to worship to. And right when I did that, I got this text from a brother who sent me, said that he had woken up with this song on his heart. He wanted to share it. And the song was entitled Jesus, Thy Blood and Righteousness. And I had never heard it. It's an old hymn. So I looked up the lyrics, and these are the lyrics. Basically, the song has this idea of we're in the presence of God, and we are clothed in His righteousness. Like His righteousness is our dress. And we have boldness in that. And so I read these words: Jesus, Thy blood and righteousness, my beauty are my glorious dress. Midst flaming worlds, in these arrayed, with joy shall I lift up my head. And then it says, bold shall I stand in that great day, for who ought to my charge shall lay. And when I read that, I could see myself, like I said, I just come from this moment of prayer and being emotional in the spirit, and I could picture myself when I read those words. I could picture myself at Jesus' feet, and I felt not a sense of boldness, not a sense of worthiness, but a sense of like humility, and like I didn't deserve to be in there, and like I couldn't show my face, and so in that moment I saw Him reach down and lifted my chin up, and my eyes met His gaze, and then He lifted me to my feet, and then He wrapped His arms around me. And I realized in that moment as He wrapped His arms around me, I was clothed in His righteousness. Like His robes were clothing me in His righteousness. And so then I realized we're swaying and we're dancing, like we're dancing together intimately. And I could feel, like I went from this feeling of mourning and sadness and depravity and loneliness, isolation, to looking into His eyes, to standing with Him, to Him holding me, and I felt this warmth and this peace and this love and this joy and the presence, and we're dancing together, which was weird, and it gets weirder, and then we're not just slow dancing, which is weird to say, but we're jumping up and down dancing, in exhilaration. And then I realized, just like in this line, it says, bold shall I stand. I'm in a mosh pit with Jesus. It's crazy. We're rejoicing, and He's rejoicing. He's rejoicing that I realize that I've experienced this transformation of being my face lifted up, till I'm standing, till I'm feeling the righteousness that He's embraced me in, to boldness, yes, let's go. And so there was that, and that carried me through that whole week. And I was just thinking about that moment. I texted a few people oh, this is so encouraging. And And the next Monday, I sat down at my desk again, and I no, it didn't happen like that. It didn't happen like that. Over the weekend, I've been blocked out of a Facebook account for maybe 5 years. And it's because I could not get into the email associated with that account. And I was looking for something, and I thought maybe I'll check that email. Maybe I had that in that email. Anyway, I log in, and I get into this email account, and I couldn't find what I was looking for. And then I thought, oh, now I should be able to get in that Facebook account. So I did. So I got into that Facebook account, and there was one thing that I wanted out of that Facebook account, and there's a kid named Jonathan. I guess he's still a kid to me. His name's Jonathan Culp, and we've kind of lived life together. And back in 2015, there was this thing called Revive Indiana, and Revive Indiana was a week where we all met together as churches in Anderson, and we would meet, and we would have a time in the morning of talking, and then we would pair up in groups of 3 or 4 and then go out, and we'd go out, we'd pass out bracelets and tracts and the Bibles and pray over people and stuff like that. And so then we would come back, we'd share stories, and we had we had this time of really powerful morning. We came back, and in the evening session we would have a speaker and then share stories and things like that, and it was more worship time. And during that night's worship time, so before I go into that, there was a lady named Cher Badgley. She was there with Jonathan, and she was kind of with him, and he was probably about 14 or 15, I'm guessing, at the time. And so there was a time in the service where the pastor called all the pastors up to the front of the church, in front of the altar, so that they could pray over them. And I remember we were in East Side Church, and I was in if you're facing the stage, I was in the far left front, and Jonathan Culp was in the far right back. And and as they said, we want all the pastors to come up, I felt something inside me, God saying, go pray over Jonathan Culp. And I thought, oh, okay, all right. Well, so I get up, I say, come on, boys. And so I'm trying to make my way across the front of the stage, but there's all these pastors, and so I'm having trouble getting in and out of them. And I look over, and I see where he is, and I'm just like, quickest way to get to him. I had this urgency, like, you got to go fast. So I had this urgency, so I just took a beeline, catty corner across the church, stepping over pews, like having people move, like going over pews to get to him. And I get to him, and of course I'm standing on a pew. He's a big boy, but I'm over him, and I put my hand on his head, and I raise my hand, and I'm just calling down blessings on him and his life. And another guy comes up, and he's doing the same thing. And so then we get done, I hug him, and Jonathan's crying, and this lady that's with him, Cher Badgley, I'm not crying. I don't know why. Usually I cry, but I'm not crying. And, I'm just telling him how proud I am. And I look over, and she is just like this mess, like just bawling, like unconsolable. And to the point that I'm concerned, like, hey, Cher, is everything okay? Are you all right? And she's like, Jason, I can't process what just happened. Like, my mind doesn't have. And I said, well, what are you talking about? And she says, well, Jason, like, Jonathan has a call to be a pastor, which I didn't know. And, like, he wanted to go forward, and so he came to me and asked me, and I said, Jonathan, it's not the time. Like, you can't go forward. You're not a pastor. And she said, so I laid my hands on his shoulders to bless him, and then I realized, whoa, this isn't your place. Like, you can't do this. And she said, and so out of the pit of my soul in desperation, I cried out to God, God, send a righteous man to bless Jonathan. And I look up and I see you walking over the pews. And like, so that was a moment that I had on that Facebook page that I had videotaped and recorded, but that's the only record that I had of it. And so I found that. I think it was on a Saturday. I got into that account on Saturday. I found that video because I had to go through a couple of them. And the next day was a Sunday. That Sunday, Jonathan Culp comes over to my house. I wasn't there. And he told my wife, Tina, that he accepted a job at a church. And years and years and years, he has been taking job after job after job. And every time he told me about it, I'm like, yeah, go, Jonathan. But in the back of my mind, I knew, you're called. You're called. And so he took this job at this church, and I didn't know it, though. I didn't know it. So that Sunday, I posted that video of what I just shared about that day to Jonathan's Facebook page and his mom and his dad and a couple other people, just like, hey, remember this day? I just wanted to throw this out there. And unbeknownst to me, that he had just accepted this job. And it was like God just reminding him who you are. Like, but, so that spoke to him, but it also spoke to me because Shara prayed, send a righteous man. And who did God call out of that whole auditorium? He called me. Like, what is that speaking to me? Like, God sees me. How does he see me? He sees me righteous, like clothed in his righteous dress. And so that next, and I didn't put all that together. Like, at the time, I was like, go, this is so cool. And then I get home, and Tina's like, oh, yeah, Jonathan came by and told me, and I still didn't put it together until the next Monday. The next Monday, I sit down at my desk, and I open up to Psalm 85 randomly, and I read Psalm 85. And it's talking about, you showed your favor to the land of the Lord. You restored the fortunes of Jacob. And I'm thinking, you showed your favor to Anderson. You're restoring the fortunes of Anderson, and it goes on. You set aside all your wrath and turned from your fierce anger. And it just goes on and on. Restore unto us, But then it gets down to the last verse in that chapter. When I read this, I just lost it. Righteousness goes before him and prepares the way for his steps. Now, you might read that and say, oh, okay, what's the big deal? But what you don't know is New Year's Eve, Tina, my wife, she has us in our New Year's celebration every year. She has these different things that we do. And one of those things that she has us do is she has these papers, and she saves Jesus' stocking, and she has us write a letter to Jesus telling him what we're thankful for in that year, and then write one or two things that we want to do for him in the next year. Okay? And so I wrote in my letter to Jesus, the last thing I wrote in my letter to Jesus were these words. And I want to read it. I want to read it good, so it's going to take me a second to find, so you're going to have to bear with me. This is what I wrote to Jesus. You are on the move. And when I wrote this next part, I was like, oh, that's weird. Why are you going to write that? But I wrote it anyway. I said, you are on the move. I will go before you to make a way. And when I read that last verse in Psalm 85, righteousness goes before him and prepares the way for his steps. Wow. God showed me, I see you righteous. And you're going to go before me and prepare a way for my steps. Man. God is so good how he works and moves and walks with us. But this isn't about me. Like righteousness, God sees you as righteous. He sees us as righteous. He calls us to go before him to prepare a way. He's coming. He's on the move. And we have the privilege of being sent out ambassadors on mission to prepare the way for his coming. Prepare for the way that he's going to bring kingdom come and bring shalom on earth. Through us, through each relationship we have, through each situation we have, through each interaction we have the opportunity to go before us because he sees us clothed in his righteousness, in his glorious dress. We can dance. We can dance with our Father in boldness because he's lifted our head. He's raised us to our feet. He's wrapped his arms around us and he wants us to dance, but not just dance. To mosh pit dance. So I hope that it's encouragement. It's an encouragement to me. Wow, what a week. What a couple weeks. It's good to walk with our Lord.